Hi, and welcome to Netrepreneurs, English edition. Today I've got with me Ross Dawson. Hi, Ross.
Hi.
Hi, Ross. You have recently written a book called Getting Results from Crowds, which is, pretty much what you do these days. Maybe can you just shortly introduce yourself? What are you currently doing?
Well, I have many ventures on. Actually, just yesterday I was reviewing what we have on, and there's over 20 projects, including, and probably even one of those 20 projects includes setting up 12 websites in the next little while, or content websites of various kinds. So there's two. I'm a futurist and entrepreneur, so a lot of what I do is to think and communicate, to speak right about the future of business, and how it impacts the world, and at the same time generating many ventures. And these are all pretty much based on the crowd, very compact at the core, and we get many people. In fact, we're just about to launch a new website called We're Looking for Talent, which is basically a call to try to get some of the most talented designers and developers and writers and so on to start working for us, and putting that into a business model where we can create value and very different monetization points, I suppose, from how we tap the value of the crowd.
Okay, great. I just read your Skype status and it says 2012 is the year of transformation. And my guess would be that for you, transformation is multidimensional. Maybe can you just have different kinds of transformation you were thinking about when you were writing that status?
Well, I mean, when I was writing that, I see that the whole world, this is a planet, is a time of transformation. Part of the context for that is that some people believe 2012 will be the year of the apocalypse and the end of the world, or big happenings. And I think that hopefully, I don't believe it's going to be the end of the world, but certainly there's a time of massive transformation. I think it's interesting that 2000 was a time, obviously, for much of the last century we look forward to as a time of transformation. And I think that we're really getting to a point now when so much of not just the information technologies, but increasingly the biotechnologies and the social change is a point when it's no longer possible to deny that this is a time of extraordinary and extraordinarily fast change. So I think that I believe that social change is as fast and as extensive as technological change. And that's really the transformation that I'm looking for. There's a social transformation flowing through, hopefully, into a transformation not just of the business landscape, but the role of government and our participation in society. I think that this is a new era for humanity. And in my business, and certainly what I'm doing, I feel that transformation, what I'm doing. And I think this is part of a big shift. But for me, I'm sort of working hard, all of the running fast to be able to make that transformation real in my businesses.
Yeah, so this is, what I really like about you is that you're not just some futurologist just, thinking about stuff that's going to happen 50 years. No, you're taking that information of the process you see and you do something with it, crowdsourcing or whatever we're going to call that in the future. Maybe we're going to split that into different kind of semantic niches, I think. You were suggesting, should we say crowdfunding or crowd? So we're going to see some development in here. But, you really take that ideas about future and transformation and you put that to use right now. So, and I think this is also, part of the transformation that from idea to materializing that idea, that is a circle which is going much quicker than before.
Absolutely. So I think it's a great point around. In all of our lives, we have a tension between what our dreams and what we visions and what we're able to create. And we're always trying to work with that gap and to, squeeze that gap, but still have a vision beyond what we're creating today.
Yeah.
So I think that's the role of the futurists. I believe we all need to be our own futurists, is to imagine what might happen, to think about the trends, to look at how they're happening. And, my definition of a futurist is someone that helps people to think about the future, to act better today. And so that's my role in helping other people, but certainly in my own businesses, that's what I'm looking to do, is to apply what I see the trends and new opportunities. Just for example, the rise of the reputation economy. I think this is a very real shift and a real opportunity. And, I may not have a big chance of succeeding against, LinkedIn or Google or Facebook that have some great starting points there, but I'll play and see if there are some things that are possible or to extract some value from. Because these are big trends, and there's opportunities to play these spaces. And the crowdsourcing, the way to distributed work being everywhere, and that opportunity to be able to pick up that. So what I was recently saying, that crowds are an extension of our capabilities. And that means that we can. The more, our imagination, that gap between our imagination and what we achieve is far smaller, because we have access to talented people, to workers around the world, to new processes, and that means that gap between what we vision with that extension of our capabilities. We don't necessarily have to hire somebody to build offices, to create things. We can have an extension of our capabilities through the crowds, and that's why I wrote the book, Getting Results from Crowds, is how to be able to actually do that and make it real.
And what I find amazing, just a few years ago when I was studying psychology in philosophy of empirical research, I think it was called, we had that picture or this concept we were called the Chinese mind, and that would, not going to recall that 100% correctly, sorry from all teachers, should have listened better, and that was the concept of, what would happen if all those people were, connected directly to each other and they could share their ideas instantly. And, just a few years later, here we are, and that is becoming reality, and this is moving so fast, and this is going way beyond, what we imagined back then a few years, what the effects would be.
Yeah, well, this ties, the idea of the global brain, all of us together being able to think, potentially have a collective unconscious. That's a nice big idea. But I think that one of the things I see is the opportunity for radically different organizational forms. I think that many of the organizations of today will continue for a long time pretty similar to how they're working. They will tap open innovation, they'll look outside some, but they'll basically, have lots of employees, they'll have offices, they'll work in similar ways. Yet there is an opportunity to do from the ground up new organizational forms. And the heart of that is, how do you attract the most talented people? And that basically requires giving people value, this distributed value creation. So, the moment we have TED Global on in Edinburgh with a theme of radical openness. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities to create new organizational forms or business models where you are giving value to those who are creating. There's many challenges around this. How do you measure that? How do you pay that out? How do people have trust in that process, and so on? And I think it's because I've been looking at the space for a long time. It's surprised that it has taken, it's happened more slowly than I would have envisaged. But I think now, with the social change as well as the rise of crowd platforms and so on, we're ripe for some new organizational forms that can create some quite extraordinary results.
Yeah. Just yesterday, Kickstarter has put his new book on Kickstarter, and that got funded within hours. That's totally different organization for creating a book now that has come up.
Yeah, and if we look at just some of these trends, one of the biggest single ones during the course of this year is crowdfunding. Kickstarter had its first $1 million project on, if I recall rightly, the 12th of February. There were $2 million projects. And since then, of course, had $10 million projects, and this is in the space of a few months.
Yeah.
So this is this whole coalescing of the attention and the energy and the money, of course, which is creating some quite different business model.
How did you...
performance of organizations. And in a way, this is accentuating because there are some who, because of their energy or enthusiasm or personal networks or whatever it is, are able to get people to donate, tens of thousands or even millions of dollars. Yet that's not available to most people or organizations. They could stick it up on anywhere they want and they can advertise, but people aren't going to support them. And so it's encouraging, in a way, this divergence in performance and attracting the ones which certainly have hopefully the best ideas, but certainly the most attractive ideas and ways of communicating it. So this is the new playing field that we have.
So are you starting your new websites, your new platforms in a crowd kind of way?
Yeah, well, absolutely. We it's what I describe as crowd business models based on crowd. So that's the foundation of what we're currently doing. As I mentioned, we're setting up a new site in the next couple of weeks. We're looking for talent, which is so we don't necessarily just go out to Odesk or Elance or other competition platforms. So we're setting up our own site to be able to get talent just for us for now. Some of the business models in which we're applying them, we're setting up a new crowd-based creative agency soon to be able to do a bunch of awesome web content, which is created by the crowd, and releasing, doing more and more content websites, paid content of various guises, where again tapping the crowd to be able to create that. And I always believe that the real value is when you look for the very best people, the most talented people, and attract them in. There are some process things that need to be done in terms of coding sites and so on. But the real value is when you can get really awesome people to contribute, and part of it is by rewarding them for the value that they're creating.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, in those times, like before, all the reward theories in psychology, they were just focused on financial gains. And what we see now, that with the internet, like there are some, like for example, Wikipedia. It's like a social model that, according to financial psychology, should have never happened. So what we see is that people are actually very interested in social recognition, stuff like this, and it's not all about money. And there's some kind of, I can't really get a grip on it yet, but there's some kind of a different currency coming up, currency of value. Like there has a social component, but that has also, also a personal component. Cannot get that right, but this is what I think it's really interesting, that maybe in the future money is not gonna be so important in the project and in the community we build.
Yeah, it applies differently in different communities. Sometimes the financial rewards are important, other times they're less important or not at all. And there's a number, as you said, there's a number of other mechanisms or areas of reward. And fun is one of them, and I think we can't ignore that. But more broadly, some of the other ones referring to are reputation. And this is part of the rise of the reputation economies. We have more and more indicators of how smart we are, how credible we are, how trustworthy we are, what our reputation is, and so there is a real payoff, which we can probably measure in dollars eventually, as well as our social status, which is predicated on our reputation. And we're pretty early on, so clout and things like that are just kind of like, how active are you on social media? They give a little clue to influence, but they're not really reputation measures at this point. But as we move into richer reputation measures, then yes, absolutely, people will work for money. They will also work for reputation, as they currently do, and a variety of other things, included, as I say, that and as feeling of contribution. And I think that's another thing which has been evident through the crowd funding movement, is that people are giving not just for goods and other things, but because they feel they are making a difference, and opening out that these structures for people to be able to contribute in many ways through little tasks or contributions or catalyzing energy in their networks.
Yeah, I'm also very happy that I'm part of making Paddle reality. So waiting for it. So maybe we can switch a little bit perspective, and I'd be super interested to know, how did you come to do what you are doing right now? Maybe can you tell a little bit about how you grew up and how you developed an interest in those things and came to fund different companies on that matter, and how what kind of a person are you? That kind of thing. I'm always interested in, why is that person exactly doing what they're doing? What's the motivation behind? And often that comes from stuff that happens before. I don't know how to phrase that differently. So maybe you can give
Yeah.
us like a very short overview of what you've done so far and where you grew up.
Sure. There's a lot to say, so try to keep it very compact. I mean, I'm Australian. I grew up in Geneva, Switzerland.
Okay.
Studied in university. Lived in then in Sydney and Tokyo and London, doing quite a few different jobs, working in financial markets and publishing and computers and so on. And when I started my own companies, one of the things I was looking to do was to communicate, to write, to think about the future. And I've always, through my life, I mean, if I track it back to my childhood, I've always been fascinated by networks. The networks in our brains, the networks of, telephones back in the old day, or communication. And I believe implicitly in a networked world. And so I wrote my book in 2002, Living Networks. I mean, there's this idea that the networks are literally coming alive. And so, I mean, I suppose it's interesting, crowdfunding was only created as a word in 2006, but I was writing about some of the examples that we now describe as crowdfunding quite a lot earlier than that. I suppose it's a belief that we can collectively create something more than we are. And I've got to say, I've never been motivated by doing the same things anyone else is, so that's one of the reasons why money is not interesting. I mean, making lots of money, it has its advantages, but it's not, there's nothing exciting about it. What is exciting, a lot of people who are making lots of money are just perpetuating the system. They're creating, they're not making any real difference. They're just, taking some money or, creating some value, yes, but they're not changing the world. They're not changing the system. So the only thing which is meaningful to me is that I am actually changing the way things are through what I do. So I'm trying to experiment, to try to be as different as possible in a way, in the models that I'm creating. And it may go wrong, it may not work, but at least we're learning, at least we're trying something new rather than doing what has been done before. So that's my motivation, is to do things in a different ways, to try to show people that there is value. And I'm trying to, that's what I'm doing, is demonstrating the value of this distributed value creation and networks, and giving value to talented people so that others can say, right, okay, it does work, or there is something there, and they can take that and use themselves.
So how are you doing that exactly? So that is by writing a book, by posting on social media like Twitter, and by giving seminars. Are there other kinds of channels you employ to get that knowledge out or to experiment?
It is, well, those are the primary channels for my communication out there, is basically speaking, writing books, social media, online communication, getting out physically and wandering about the world and meeting people as much as possible. And also mainstream media, that actually is useful. It's funny, was on national television 4 times last week, which is, it's a useful way to reach people that aren't necessarily on some of those other channels. And, the fact is that people see television as a credible platform, so that it's you can actually sometimes have a better impact by being on those channels as well. It's all complementary. Everything adds up in the different channels, so hopefully the messages finally get through.
Can you give an example, of the one biggest thing that how you have impacted the world with what you do? Like one thing where you were even super surprised. Wow, they take that knowledge and they're going to do that with that. What would they think of it? Wow, this is great.
It's hard to say. I mean, I would hope that when I wrote the book Living Networks, and really just looking at this network world, the social networks and the way they would evolve, and that was written before, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Friendster, any of those existed. And so hopefully some of the messages which I was getting out about the living networks reached directly or maybe indirectly some of the people who are helping to shape the world of social networks that we have today. So I don't know, but hopefully I played a little part in being able to push along the extraordinary emergence of social networks and social media that we have today.
Mm-hmm. When you get up every morning, what do you think? What is motivating you to get out of bed and you do stuff?
It's lots of things, but it is proving the model. It's like I was saying, I've got this vision, and one of the concepts underlying what I'm describing is the infinite, and that's close to. I have this, this will actually I've not communicated this in a condensed form now, and I do have ambition in various formats, including potentially novels,
mm-hmm.
to communicate this idea of the infinite and the infinite loops, being inspired by some, amongst others, Gödel Escher by Douglas Hofstadter,
mm-hmm.
And other ideas around the recursivity. And I believe there's this underlying model of how things feed on themselves that I'm trying to demonstrate. I'm trying to, I just believe in it, I see it, I feel it, and I'm just trying to show people that the idea, the concept is real, and it can create value. People can create businesses, they can create livelihoods,
mm-hmm.
they can change the world. So that, in a way, that's what really motivates me, is to be able to really crystallize and make real this concept of this infinite, this recursivity, self-reference, and its power.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's super interesting, because during my time at university, I kind of came to see that the statistics we use right now, like general linear model, it's so not made to describe the world around us, because everything is recursive, everything is a dynamic system, and
yes.
That was really shocking to me, that we actually lack the mathematical and methodological basis, to understand the world around us, and that the concept we use in most of the science is actually, such a crude abstraction of what we see, that it's not able to grasp the real value, the real processes that are going on. And so I think this is also something you're describing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the languages are there. So systems dynamics, which was founded by Jay Forrester at MIT decades ago, has provided a foundation of structures of thinking about systems effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's an area which I've been, around for a long time. And it's interesting that it still hasn't expanded as much. There are a lot of tools and methodologies and processes for system thinking that are being applied, but still not as extensively as they could be. But what is certainly refreshing is that over the last dozen years in particular, we've seen the real rise of network science. Mm-hmm. And it's, a couple of decades ago, network science didn't exist. Mm-hmm. And we've really seen a real richness in this, a new frame in which to be able to understand not just the more obvious things, such as technological networks or utility networks or neural networks, but many other aspects of life, from the cellular to the world around us. And this new advancement of network science has, I think, infiltrated how people think, and that's been a very useful platform, which is creating new ways of being able, non-linear ways of being able to understand our world.
Mm-hmm. So you're a pretty inspiring person, not just with what you're saying, but also how you're saying it, because I really feel this comes from deep desire to create value for the world. Like, it's not like, okay, I'm gonna do this, but you're like, yeah. So where do you get your inspiration from? Can you name 3 people that you find inspiring, and that maybe even I could interview to also get inspiration from them and see what are they doing?
Yeah, well, the 2 people who I suppose have very similar, I think, ways of thinking about me, and certainly have a far bigger impact themselves are Don Tapscott and John Hagel. Mm-hmm. And extraordinary admiration for both of them. John Hagel has been writing about some of the ideas that are happening in the web. He wrote about them in the 90s, things that are really developing day to day, and really an inspiration in not just the content of his thinking, but how he communicates. Don Tapscott is in precepts of openness and transparency. He's been preaching for a long time. He really understands, and he has the credibility and the clout to reach the most senior people in the world in technology and business, and that's fantastic. So I fully align with their thinking, and grateful that they are making such an impact in their communication. I think those are the first two that come to mind. I think there's many other people who'd which really are making a difference. And actually, just one other person I met recently who I think is a real inspiration is Indy Johar, who is, amongst other things, a co-founder of Hub Westminster. And he is passionate about distributed value creation. And he has reinvigorated in me this idea, the energy to be able to explore more and to create more models for distributed value creation. But what they're doing with his organization, including Westminster, is fantastic. Some real different ways of thinking and different ways of working that they're creating.
Wow, thanks. There's some. I'm gonna check those people out. Really looking into what they're saying. It's gonna be very interested. So this is like my personal crowd system. Everyone I interview asks for 3 more people. So this helps me to open different tracks of interviews, and also connects me to that people in a different way than if I approach them personally. And it also, what I found out later, it helps me to get the value higher and higher, because if people refer someone they find inspiring like that kind of, empowers the whole system of interviews I do.
Absolutely.
Well, to round that up, what if people, want to start using crowds? Let's call it crowds, just for now, because I think I like the idea. It's more, it's bigger than just crowdsourcing or crowdfunding. It kind of incorporates the whole concept. So if people want to start using crowds for the business today, what are 3 easy steps, they can do right now?
I think there's many starting points. One of the things I tried, so in our crowdsourcing landscape, we have 22 different categories of crowdsourcing. There's many different, it's many things, and there's many ways to tap the crowd. So I think it's very different depending on the types of organization, but it could, for some organizations, it's about innovation. For other things, it's about being able to do some of their processes more efficiently. For others, it's about being able to engage with customers or communities externally. So I think it always, same with social media, you have to come back to, well, what is it we want to achieve? And I suppose there's an understanding that more is possible now than it was before through being able to catalyze these networks and crowds. So the first starting point is saying, what is it that we want to be able to, and try things. I mean, it's really, the only way to learn is by doing. And there is no, well, I've tried as much as I can in getting results from crowds to write the manual as to how you go out and do these things and get results from them. It's, you have to experience that for yourself. You have to gain that knowledge and experience. You have to see what works and what doesn't work for you. So I think the starting point is really to say, well, which direction do we want to go in? Do we want to get some efficient work, or do we want to get some great design, or do we want to push out innovation, or do we want to engage with customers? And then to be able to try something, find a platform, do an experiment and see what happens from that. And that will point the way to what comes beyond that. Okay,
great. Well, if people just take, one piece of information from that whole interview, maybe they look first 5 seconds and then scroll right to the end, what should they take from that interview? What is like your key
That
message?
that there are new possibilities today as never before, and significantly because of we have access to crowds. We have literally access to all of the talent in the world, almost all the talent in the world. So the message is there is extraordinary potential. It is limited only by the power of your imagination. So what will you do with that? And I'm trying to show what I'm able to do, and I think that it's up for everyone to be able to take that, unprecedented potential and create something with that.
Ross, thank you very much for your precious time. Thank you very much for the insights into crowd and how you came to deal with that and what you're personally doing with that. I found that enormously interesting, and well, I hope to see much more from you in the future.
It's my real pleasure, Martin. Great to be speaking with you.
Okay, bye-bye.